Hello and welcome to the Love Foundry podcast. It is the 24th of April. We got myself and Dan, and we were just having a brief conversation beforehand. And I was talking about some of the things that hold me back, that there's times when I am not giving um, all that I want to give, and times when I hold back and I'm reserved and I don't want to be doing that, to be holding myself back from other people, from, I think, right action. And uh, Dan was kind of talking about, well, it can't be, I can't do it from a place of on my terms, on Seb's terms, and I have to step free from that. So no, that's not a very good question. I'm more of a
Well,
statement.
no,
But
you're making the point. I think we don't have to force the issue.
yeah,
It has to do with living in your nature. You're in the I'm looking at a couple of ways to talk about this, but one is that living in your body as a ego, that's the house you live in.
right.
And you can make it reflect you. And people with a lot of money and big egos, they build a reflection of that. And they get a two-door house or a big Spanish house or some other kind of house, and they live in it.
Yeah,
It's around them. It's the shell for the hermit crab. But you're actually the life in there. You're not the ego in there. You're the life in the ego.
hmm.
And so you're framing yourself to fit the world in which you find yourself. And there are people that are bigger. There are people who are stronger. There are people who are more artistic. There are people who are different kinds of houses because they have different kinds of talents. And then they have different kinds of attitudes about those talents and about others around them. And it frames them in the way in which they decide to live. But that's not living according to love. That's living according to how you think about yourself, how you feel about the world, what circumstances bring you into a relationship with. So, if you want to include love, that changes the nature of the whole enterprise
Yeah,
because it's adding another dimension, a complete different dimension to yourself. This is myself with love, not myself choosing to love if I want to or choosing not to love if I don't like the color of your eyes or the cut of your jib. It's just a different level of partaking of the human experience with others. Now, if you were living by yourself, totally somewhere, you'd still have a house, but it would be framed more inwardly. It would be you reflecting how you think the window should be shaped. You wouldn't be compromising your structure idea of yourself for how others are. And that's the conformity that we find ourselves falling into when we get into a large group of people.
yeah,
We find ourselves taking on other people's ideas of structure so that we can be in harmony sort of with them. You know, like the guy on your street that decides to paint his house purple, dark purple. And everybody else looks at kind of like that with kind of like, well, the house looks a lot like the other houses on the street, except damn that purple. So we put ourselves at nonconformity because that's what suits our ego. So now let's look at the guy who chooses to embrace love and bring it into his inner house and put it through out to the world. And this is a phase we enter into when we recognize the reality of love. We have to decide to keep it in the box and under the bed, or we want to bring it out into the room and share it with other people. And we can do, we can go put a little Buddha statue in the front yard, or a little statue of Saint Francis or something, and that can be as much of the statement as we make.
Yeah.
Or we can decide we want to bring it more internally into ourselves, which means you're going to open yourself up to the very energies of love itself, independent of all other energies, the energies of will, the energies of intelligence through ego and through intellect, the energies of physical attachment. And we focus on the energy of love, which is a unique property.
Yeah.
And it's a unique property we are designed to wear, to bring in, to have come from us or through us. But because most people don't, we don't really have a memory of it. We don't have a real memory of what it feels like to have a coexistence in ourselves with love. When when we fall in love as a youth and we have a person or a thing, an object that we identified as something we love, we have a sort of borderline modified version of it.
Hmm.
That person has done something energetically with you that changes how you feel about things, and now that's coming out into the space. It we don't really see of it as an all-consuming shift. It does become an all-consuming shift on a certain level, but we just kind of fold it into the rest of our life, and now we're just having that love energy going on with us. And often it's not love at all, it's something else. It's a chemistry shift, so to speak, a glandular shift. And we're calling that love because we don't have another name for it. And it seems to come out of the idea of wanting to include someone else into our inner nature, into our inner world, and make
Hmm.
our inner world and their inner world coexist together. So it's not foreign to love, but it's often more chemical interaction or energetic interaction than it is love itself, which is why we can fall into it and then fall out of it.
Yeah.
And then wonder what the hell attracted us to that dimwit anyway. How did I ever, Well, because we caught the angle on them that stimulated our hormones or something. So, anyway, now we're talking a little bit about what happens when you choose to integrate love into your house, into the
Yeah.
place in which you dwell, coexist with love in your inner consciousness and how you come to the world. You're not going to come to the world without it. At some point, you decide, look, if I'm going to come to the world, and we all are, as long as we're living in it, we have to come to it. I'm going to come to the world with love because as a companion to me, because that's the kind of persona I want to present to the world,
Yeah.
one that loves. And I may not have the powers and energies of love to transform and transmute and to unify and to bring grace to the table, but I'm going to start. I'm going to start with a relationship because I've decided that that's real and that's truth, even though I don't know how it's real and I don't know how it's truth. I've just decided it's real. And that brings you into the nature of faith in something other than what you already know. You can't have faith in something that you know fully because now you have reality with it, not faith. So we admit to ourselves that we have faith in love being something extraordinarily real in life. Life's creation is love, and love's creation is everything in the world in some way. So we decide we're going to take this in and become co-creators with it or cohabitors with it. So cohabitation with love brings change to your ego, to the way you would normally present yourself from the way you grew up.
Yeah.
Now, that brings about radical difficulty in our life, depending on how we grew up. Most people did not grow up in a place or a way and with parents who were enlightened enough that adding the direct consciousness of love to who we are and what we are and bringing it into our life, into our inner self, into our heart, into our head, isn't going to create some kind of challenge. It's going to. You know, you were raised by bigots and you don't like Chinese people, black people, British people. So you have to get over that because love does not make those distinctions. It sees the fault of other people just as equally and clearly as you might, but it does not choose to have a rejecting energy towards them.
Yeah.
It's not how it works. It doesn't make judgments. Love's not judging anyone. It's simply loving everyone. And their response to love defines their relationship to it. And that's where the world is right now. Everyone is as loved in the world as Christ. They're all as loved as any child, as any adult, as any person. Everyone is loved equally.
Hmm.
But how they respond to that love defines their relationship to it. Love's not defining the relationship that it has with them. We are,
Yeah.
and
And
which is
I feel
great.
that I feel that barrier that I know I've created that blocks me from flowing love. And I think there's times in my life when I move past that and I do allow flow to happen. But I think how I go through my daily life, how I go through and meet the world most of the time is I'm blocking love from fully going there, and I'm blocking from fully connecting to the person in front of me in a way that I want to meet them fully with love in the way that love wants to meet them. But I, Seb, don't want to step free from how Seb would. And you kind of talked about it earlier of, there's Seb's house and he wants to put love in, but he's moving around the furniture and wants love to kind of join the house through moving around the furniture rather than stepping out of Seb's house and moving into Love's house. And that's going to look very different to how I want my house to look.
Well,
And
hold on.
yeah,
It's not that drastic. It looks like that drastic because
I want it
you're
to be
used.
that drastic.
Well, yes, and look, if you're a guy, and this is true of women too, but I'm looking at it as a guy because that's what I know more than I know anything else. If you're looking at it as a guy and you want to move a woman into your house because you've fallen in love and you're going to marry her and you're going to have kids and all that, you're going to have to make changes to accommodate her needs. And some guys are pretty good about that. Some guys are terrible with that. Some guys have taken on all of this ego idea of masculine protectiveship and the one who's in control of things. And so because they have to meet the Huns at the gate every day when they get up and go out and keep their house strong in the society in which we live, they take over that. They don't want to give up any of that ownership space or strength space because it would weaken them. They think it would weaken them, and they don't know anything about the woman they just brought in to be part of their life, so they don't know what she can contribute to them. And men traditionally just completely underestimate women because they just come out of this thing and they're poor, frail little things that can't do anything, and which isn't true at all. And women sometimes fall for the same fantasy because it leaves the guy doing all the work. He's out there mowing the yard and fixing the fence and putting up the Christmas lights and doing all the stuff. So let him. What the hell? I don't want the job. And I'll just stay in the house and tidy up. So the beauty of a relationship, especially one that produces children, is that it prepares us for the greater relationship of moving love into your house, your personal house, into your own consciousness. And the more you love some other person, the more they occupy you, because their needs and their concerns are your needs and your concerns, and there's no differentiation among it. And if they need something drastically, then you're fully committed to it. So that's a great training ground for becoming coexistent with love. And it always has been, by the way. And I think that that's the reason it gets such uh, attention and value in the Bible and in other places like that, because this is the direction the human race needs to go. It needs to go to the place where it recognizes the reality of love itself, not being in love with somebody, not getting love from anybody, but love entering you and causing transformation in you in the direction of love's activities, which are harmlessness and gentleness and creative good and the things that love brings. And so we have to surrender. We have to learn how to surrender to those qualities in love, replacing the more brutish qualities of uh, threatening things and dominating things and being the point of strength, as if love weren't strong. See, there's a lot of misunderstandings about love. Not a lot, I mean, an enormous amount, because humans aren't engaged consciously in a understanding relationship with it. If you've never lived with a woman, if you're a guy and you've never lived with a woman and never had one in your house doing what she can do, you probably wouldn't have any idea what she can provide when she's of a mind to. I mean, there are women that think they should be taken care of like pet cats or something, but people who join a man, women who join a man, understanding that this is now their life, his life, her life, our life, and they have an equal responsibility for its success in protecting the house, the children, the way of life, all those things. They have enormous powers, powers that guys don't even realize or recognize until after they live with them for a while. So this is part of learning to live, but it isn't going to give you a conscious relationship to the energy of love. It's going to get you closer to it, and it's going to get you to the point where you recognize that you love that person. And that's like as close as you can get until love itself it starts to emerge from you towards that person in such a way that you realize, oh, that's love coming from me. It's coming out of me because I have been gradually getting closer to it within me as I try to love and protect this person and my children outside of me. So you see, it's a trap. It's a life trap designed to bring you into empowerment with love because it has enormous power in it. Not by acting the way you think a loving person would, but by actually transmitting love itself. But but the human personality, which has free will, has to learn how to do that. And it's a really mind-numbing project to try to think, well, how do I get close to this stuff, this substance, this energy, this frequency, and let it act through me? Well, you have to stop thinking of it as something that you have control over, something that you're the mind for, you're the brains of the outfit. You're not. Love is intelligent, way more intelligent than a human being is on any level,
Hmm.
because it has creative power. It has the creative power of life itself, has the creative power of the universe in it. And it constantly applies that power to life around it. And life responds to that power by rejecting it or accepting it in itself. And because love will not violate your free will, it doesn't seem like it's doing much. It's not telling you what to do. And it's a confusing relationship. You're relating to something that is enormously intelligent, incredibly creative, and has the power that turns that rotates the solar system. That's how powerful it is, but yet you can't figure it out. But you know, down in you somewhere, it lurks. It lives there. It's willing to come to the surface and participate with you. Even though it has this immense power, it's willing to power a tiny little engine, like a human being, as well as the engine of the universe, the engine of the galaxy, the engine of the solar system. All of those engines are being empowered creatively by the energy of love. Human beings are not. They have chosen with their free will to empower themselves without love, because they didn't know how to consciously empower themselves with love. Now, when we became human beings, we gained self-conscious awareness. We gained the responsibility to empower ourselves with love as self-conscious aware beings.
Hmm.
But we didn't know where the hell the stuff was. We had no vision of it. We had no more relationship to it than gravity, less. We know we can't step off a cliff, but we didn't even know where love was in us or around us. And gradually over the centuries, we have been closing in on it. And every civilization, and we've had a number of them, Egyptians had a civilization, the Indians had a civilization, the Greeks had a civilization, the Romans. We've had these different civilizations going on around us that we've grown up through as human beings, and we've accumulated out of each of those civilizations certain strengths. And you don't think it, because most people don't pay any attention to the past. But just a civilization like the Babylonians, oh, were the Babylonians? Oh, they lived somewhere around, the Mediterranean or the Middle East or somewhere in there, Babylon, wherever that is. And they did what? Well, they gave us a lot of things. They gave us measurement. They gave us length and height and depth. They gave us things that became tools for us to use. And so when you start to think about it, you think, well, I should say thanks to the Babylonians, because I can build something. I can figure something out. I've got algebra. I've got tools that I didn't have before, that the human race didn't use before. So just that one civilization, which came and went over a period of a couple thousand years, instilled into humanity's consciousness gifts.
Hmm.
Well, the gift of love was installed into our consciousness through the Christian dispensation, which happened 500 years or so, 300 to 500 after the Greeks. So whatever the Greeks gave us, which is intellect, thinking, and a lot of cool stuff, they gave us those things. And we've built on them and we've used them. And then along came the experience of Jesus, the experience of the crucifixion of a human being who was embodying love in a way that the ruling class didn't seem to approve of. So that brought us a gift that was invisible to us. It brought us a gift within us. It took love from outside in the universe and put it inside a human being, officially.
Yeah.
But nobody knew what that meant. But since then, 2,000 years later, we're starting to figure out that something happened. And that something that happened brought us closer to it. Now we're ready to take a step into it, into a direct confrontation with love, with our own free will, and say, hey, as long as you're here in the universe and you're not going anywhere, because life itself is your essence, the divine being, whatever that is love. That's its nature. So as long as that's true, why don't I build that into what I'm doing, and then we can co-create together. And the house that I live in will have a partner that is the creative energy of life, the positive creative energy. Now, if you affect that step, if you take yourself up on the challenge and you actually complete it, which you can do, everyone can, and everyone eventually will, because it's reality.
Mm.
We're living
Yeah.
outside of what's real. So we might as well step into what's real and find out how that can improve our life. Well, because it has creative properties in the true meaning of creativity. Most people don't even think about what it is to be creative, to actually cause to be. Well, love has that ability to cause something to be, according to your true need to live in a universe created by love, by life. Well, that puts you in harmony with an enormous amount of things. So it's worth pondering, it's worth giving a shot at, it's worth thinking through. And when we go back and look at the experiences of the Christ consciousness, which is what they call that energy when it's in a human being, um, it's a cosmic Christ consciousness when it's out there in the universe, in the stars, in the heavens, in the great beings that live and dwell there. But if we put it inside ourselves and enter into relationship to it, then it becomes a cohabiter of our house
Mm.
in which we dwell. And then we enter into another series of lessons, longer, slower maybe lessons, in which we realize that not only is it in us, in our house, dwelling in the body with us, in the mind with us, in the heart, but you begin to find less and less distinction between you and the energy of love itself. And it's astounding to think that you've always been love, but because you've been unconscious of yourself and what you actually are, its powers have been withheld from you and me. We withhold those powers from ourselves because we simply don't know what to do with them. If I gave you a pipe wrench and you've never seen one put to use by a plumber, you might just put it on the shelf somewhere and leave it there because it's a tool of some kind. I might have a use for it, but I don't know what to do with it. So I don't do anything with it. Well, we kind of did that with love. We just put it on the shelf somewhere in our consciousness, and we take it out and clean it off once in a while and look at it and think about it and put it back because we don't know how to get hold of its powers. We don't know how to release them into us. And it causes disturbance in us when we do it. Can be difficult disturbance.
Why do these disturbances come up, Dan?
Huh?
If this is the the natural step of choosing love, of picking up that tool, why and what is it that causes these disturbances in us?
Well, the human race has been living thousands of centuries, really, without it,
Hmm.
without any consciousness of it. So every problem we came up against that we have overcome, and we've come up against some serious life issues. Great animals that were eating us like we were hot dogs on legs and weather that was killing people massively, and misunderstandings among us that caused us to slaughter each other by the millions, hundreds of millions, dying in starvation when there's food all over the planet. So these are things that have happened that we've not been able to easily solve by not having the empowering energies of love. So we developed other strengths to get by, to get through it. The strengths of will and the intelligent application of will to our desire for survival and our desires for egoic accomplishment. You want something, and then you want more of something, and then you want a bigger house than your neighbor. So, well, it's not necessary for you to have a bigger house than your neighbor. You want one. So this is ego's desire. I want a castle like the king down at the end of the road. Well, I can't take over the kingdom. I'm not strong enough. So I'll just build a bigger house and I'll be sort of a mini castle. And then I'll cozy up to the king and I'll take a job that gives me some power with him. And then I'll fit into that picture. So we've done all of these things and we did them all without loving because we didn't know how to do it. It was like a bridge too far. Where's the love? Well, what's love? It's down the road somewhere. We hadn't come to it as we grow consciousness. We didn't come to mathematics. We didn't come to alphabet. We didn't come to feeling good about something that we didn't know anything about. We have to come to those in time on our journey. And now the human race collectively has grown dangerous to itself. Well, it's always been dangerous to itself, but now it's super dangerous. And we're coming to even more critical danger with the new electronics and the new artificial intelligence and the new energies that we're releasing in science. So it behooves us to learn something about the self-management of love that could temper what we do with these powers and how we use them. So we're at a critical juncture of embracing one of life's the greatest, as far as we know, the greatest potential energy there is in the universe is love. Not because it can create a beautiful painting or it can create a Tesla or some other thing, but because it can transform evil into good. Well, that's a fantastic thought. Can you really transform evil into good with love? Is that actually doable? Not just in your own nature, but in the nature of others. And yes, you can, as a matter of fact. Now, how does it do that? How does love transform evil into good? Well, it's a kind of an alchemical process. It's a process in which energy affects the chemistry of evil, which is the absence of love. So if you think of evil as something like a piece of coal, then you want to turn a coal into a diamond. That takes pressure and time. But if you think of coal as matter absent love, and that's what makes it coal, and you add love to it, it becomes something different, simply because you've made it whole. You've brought it into a universe in which love is invested in it. And then the diamond that it becomes is a living thing. It's not just a pretty thing, it's a living thing. And it carries this amazing energy in it. And if you bring it into a human being and saturate the life spirit of a human being with love, then all of a sudden that human being becomes something quite different and quite powerful and able to hold its ground against great negative energy. Not because you become strong, but because love becomes strong in you, and love, upon contact with that which would harm you, transforms and transmutes it into good. See, that's a reckless idea. That's like, holy mackerel, that's how's that going to work? Well, it won't work without love. And because we haven't been doing it with love, we haven't had that relationship in ourselves developed sufficiently. We haven't really thought about how it can do it. Now, when someone showed up who took on love, I don't know how. I mean, to me, and I just look at things that went on in my world before I was born, and I evaluate the impact they had on the world long before I took up space in it, and I see that this individual took on love. Jesus at his baptism with John, and the record is pretty clear, if not easily interpreted. It's clear, though. When he gets baptized, John's baptized in a way, thinking he's baptizing people into the Jewish religion and looking for a new voice in that religion because one had been prophesied for several hundred years by Elijah and other people. And so this young rabbi, like, I don't know how you become a rabbi in the Jewish religion. I suppose you just take up the cloth and call yourself that. But this young man shows up to be baptized, and he realizes, looking at him, that this guy has that Messiah character written all over him. Just the way a coach can look at some guy and decide that guy belongs on the football team. You can just tell by looking at him, that guy's got what it takes. And so, as it turns out, he was not only good at it, he was the one that was perfect at it. So this energy, this love energy, enters him to live in him personally. And all of these miraculous things start happening. And his consciousness was prepared to receive it. Among all the human beings, I wouldn't have been prepared to receive it. It would have been like, what the hell? And I don't think anybody would have. I don't think anybody could have. I think it happened exactly where it did and when it did, because this is the first human being where the circumstances were prepared properly, that love itself could take up residence in them, and chose to do so. And so that's an astounding event, and it's a one-off. It's not like it happens everywhere to everyone, like maturing to 21 years old or something. Now you can go out and get drunk. It happened to this individual, and the reaction of that in the culture in which he lived caused him to amaze and astound people, and probably scare up people, and eventually to interfere so much with the religious people and the Romans who were running the town that they decided it was in their interest to get rid of him, because he's a threat. He's a threat to their power. Their power was religious, relating the Jews to God. And suddenly someone shows up and is telling you the God's inside of you and you can relate to him yourself. Well, that you just effectively put them all out of a job. And they were, some of them, living pretty good. And the Romans hadn't caught on yet to the fact that this Christianity thing could threaten their system of gods. They didn't really care about that at that stage. They figured it out after a while when they saw how it was growing. But that took a while. That took a while after the incident of Golgotha, where he's crucified. So they decide to hook it up and get rid of this guy, and but they made the matter worse. They took him out of the frying pan and into the fire, because when you crucified love, you turned it loose. In a strange way, it was turned loose into the entire human evolution. The whole human kingdom became accessible to love. Now, probably wouldn't have known that, but the guy who had it happen to him did know that. So he taught his guys, this is what happened. This is what's going to happen. This is what will happen. And after he shows up, after they've already killed him once, and he shows up to visit the folks and talk about it, they were pretty sure he was right. At least his apostles were. And so they took up the challenge of honoring that in them and going and getting other people to recognize they had a relationship to this thing in themselves. So this is a miraculous, weird, strange kind of event to have happen in a living universe where great beings can make choices like this, the greatest being. So suddenly the greatest being in the universe is living inside of all the human beings because they're having trouble finding it in themselves or in the universe or anything. And they're being overwhelmed by negativity. And the universe, whatever else it is, cares about itself. And this little planet, for whatever other reason, was having real difficulty. So it shows up, and here it is. Now, that doesn't make it unique. It makes it a unique experience to us, but love is the same love on Earth is everywhere in the universe. It's not local to just us. But we, for some reason, couldn't find our ass with either hand. It was nowhere till we could spot it, nowhere where we could assimilate it or see it or cognize it or form a relationship to it. So we were given something that made it much more possible for us to do that. And we started a religion about it, which went off into left field, and most of them, and off into right field, and off into nowhere, and didn't because they didn't know how to teach it. They just recognized something happened here. And if you go back and look at the Bible, you realize there was very little educational process going on here. The whole experience itself was the education. There was nobody saying, in the Yoga Sutras of the Buddha, there's a whole lot of information about not really definitive information, but you got a sort of blueprint of how to develop yourself through to higher consciousness. But the most instruction you got from Jesus was when he was leaving, and he said, a new commandment I give unto you, love one another. Well, okay, how are we supposed to do that? Well, there's a way, and we'll figure it out. He knew that. He knew there's no way to tell someone what to do.
Yeah.
So you've got to let them want it and turn their attention towards it, and then let love do the telling. Because love knows its own way. It knows how. And if you asked sincerely, it'll always respond. But if you don't ask, you don't get. That's kind of how life works. So the boys went about telling people that this was possible in some form, and they began to believe that it was, and they began to have some faith in it. And then the Romans saw it as a threat and started crucifying the hell out of them. And it's amazing that the thing ever got off the ground, but it did, because the energy of love itself was joined with those who were, you only had 12 guys. The leader of the band had already left, gone to deeper work, to higher orders, on his way to the divine source to get the will of the thing, which we can only presume that he has done. So how is this growing? Well, look at the world. Look at even and what amazes me is even those who don't believe, who are complete atheists and go, this is bullshit, are using the very softening of the human consciousness to allow it to appreciate the idea of something as astounding as love in order to form an opinion against it. You have to be able to think about something to hate it. And so it's only the success of it that has allowed even the atheists, well, the agnostics, they don't know what the hell's going on. They're just can't form an opinion. So the bottom line is it's been growing, and we've developed all kinds of philosophy about treating others the way we would like to be treated, and all of those kinds of things. And some of it came from the Greeks, who said, let's just live a rational life. Let's just treat people well, because then that way they won't start a war with us. And if we share, we've got enough on this earth to get along. And that's kind of a rational philosophy, but it doesn't have at the root of it an astounding power emanating from life. That's a rational power emanating from intellect. And that's what the philosophers grabbed hold of, because that, remember, that was 300 years before love showed up. So, and that was something we could get our mind around. The idea of doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's a great idea. And it got success. But along with that came the idea of love. And it transcended to some degrees the idea of the intellectual idea of it. And the philosophers couldn't figure out how to quantify love, so they just called it an emotion and relegated it to the cheap seats and went on about the business of their ethical philosophy. Or they had to take the position that God was a power in the universe and you need to obey that power. So you only had two choices as far as the existentialists were concerned: obey God as a philosophy, as an idea, even if you can't find the guy or girl, or just live ethically. And someone, if you raise your hand and said, well, what about love? That didn't get anybody on their feet, because they said, oh, that's just a part of the religious philosophy of obeying God, because that's much of the way it had been interpreted as a religion. Remember, in the Catholic religion, for example, the one founded primarily after the end of the Christ cycle, God is the authority. And if you don't obey the will of God, what happens to you?
Go to hell.
The trap door opens, and you fall to the lower dimensions and burn in hell for whatever eternity means, longer than a weekend. So it you see what happened to love. It again, it got forgotten again as a reality. It just gets left out.
Yeah, and the idea that it's in you is completely gone. It's like the church wants to hold.
No, because they're focused on the entity that's outside and beyond you, the
Exactly.
God guy. And the God guy had moved inside of Jesus. He who has seen me has seen the Father. And that's what pissed off the Sanhedrin, the people who were running the religious show at the time. They didn't like that, because you're one-upping yourself. You're giving yourself the power of God. How conceited are you? That's how it looked to them.
Yeah.
But he was just telling them the truth of his own experience.
Yeah.
And he was telling them that love was the experience of God. God's not some authority lording it over everyone. It's a being of love. And then when they formed a religion out of it, they took the religion of the Jews and they smushed it together with the religion of the Christians, because they were all Jewish after all, and at the beginning, and sort of thought, well, this will help sell it. This will help make it something marketable, not understanding the power that had been released into these men who were going around. They weren't doing that. They weren't creating a religion. They were creating faith in love in others. Well, it wasn't very long, 2 generations, and we suddenly are forming a hard religion out of it. To this day, it still exists. So it's no surprise that we bangled it up a bit. And while there's those who got the spirit of what was being talked about, like St. Francis of Assisi or someone like that, and they could do even the miracles. Assisi was curing people of leprosy because he knew the spirit of love and was totally surrendered in the idea of being it, of having it, of letting it live in him the way it was described by his previous teacher. So now here we are. Assisi was, I don't know, I don't remember how far back he was, but well over 1,000 years to where we are, and we still haven't taken on his capacities because we're not very love-like in our personalities. We are a lot softer and gentler and kinder in many, many ways to people we don't even know than we ever used to be. But we still haven't given ourselves the relationship that unfolds the power of love in us, that can do the healing and the transforming and the transmuting of life around us, particularly evil, into good, and reshape the world according to love, which would be a much better world, much better looking world, if nothing else. So now we're here. Now we're here at a place where the intellect has become sufficiently free of superstition. There's a lot still in it, but it's sufficiently free that it can consider these things and act on them in an experimental way. Nobody can do it for you. The priest down at the corner can pray for you, but you have to make the choice to change into someone who's investing this energy into his life. And if that brings you up against a resentment of certain things or a negativity in your personality, then maybe you have to give that up. Maybe love can't coexist in you with that easily. So, this is the challenge humanity's up against. But it's not one we're not prepared to meet. It wouldn't have happened 2,000 years ago if we weren't qualified sufficiently to take up the challenge. So, I operate on that premise. I operate on the premise that I can drive a car because someone built one. I mean, they built them, so we must, when you're a kid trying to learn how to drive a car, it's like, I don't know, got to get, because when I was a kid, it was clutches and brakes and gear shifts. And you think, I'm never going to get this coordinated, but I'm sure as hell going to try until I figure it out because I want to drive it down to the corner. I just can't wait to get this car going and drive it down to my friend's house. So when we really want something, we figure out how to do it. And love is no different. Once we really recognize its potential to our life and want it, you're 3/4 of the way there. Now you just practice like driving the car
Taking
and
action.
take action with it. And pretty soon you're going to be shifting gears fine. You'll be up to 40 miles an hour and scaring yourself to death. But that's fine. That's what the human race is good at. Geez, look at the stuff we do that is utterly and sillily dangerous. We fly around at thousands of miles an hour on these super jets, and you just go into Hawaii and you're at 30,000 feet above the earth, going 500 miles an hour in a tin can, and they're serving you cocktails. We're pretty amazing, and so why would we not think we can do this? Of course we can do it. And why would we not imagine that if we do it, it'll be better for us and certainly better for the human race around us? Now, I recognize some of the difficulties that we have when we try to do this because I have tried myself and realized, oh, this is harder than learning how to drive. So the Love Foundry is something that I've created to help people empower themselves with this unique energy because it takes partly intellect, it takes partly feeling, it takes partly physical, and it really actually takes love itself, mixed into you like a cake. You know, I don't know when they figured out you could make a cake rise. Somebody figured out, hey, if I add yeast to this thing, the bread will rise because it's going to create little bubbles and the bubbles will lift the dough. And otherwise, everybody was having pretty flat bread or cake or anything else we were baking. We just threw it in the pan and fried it and ate it, chewed our way through it. But then somebody went, poof, and here's this beautiful angel food cake. Well, once you have the right ingredients in the right order inside of you, love appears. And the first few times that it does, it's like, oh my God, it's startling and amazing. And you feel the shift and you start to think, wow, this could really be good. And then you go back and try again and you missed it completely. Can't figure out how you did it the first time, like some alchemist trying to create blue glass or something. But you puggle around and pretty soon you get another shot at it. And that's all it takes. And then pretty soon there are people that are doing it better than other people. And you ask them, what are you guys doing? Because I can't seem to get this bread to rise. And they go, well, this is a posture we get into in relationship to love. And we do this and this and this, and it just starts to catch hold and it starts to work. And pretty soon it's flowing. That's all there is to that.
Yeah.
It's just learning how to do something and then teaching other people how to do it themselves. And someone will show up and do it with way greater ease than you did because that's just natural to them. And they are already 3/4 of the way there. And they go, oh, now I see what you mean. Just do that and adjust this. And then bang, they're like, whoa, this is really good. I should have done this sooner. And you're looking at them going, damn it, that took me years to get that good at that. And he's done it in 10 minutes. Well, that's what we've got in our younger generations. But we have no faith in the stuff. So we're not inviting them into that game. We haven't done it. So why should we ask them to do it? Which is silly because previous generations to us never flew airplanes, never drove cars. They never did these things. But now you just do them. So I think that all of that to be said is that wherever you are in yourself, in your house, you can clear some space for love and invite it in and start to act as if you wanted the relationship. Because love knows. It knows if you want a relationship with it. It knows when you don't. Because the human race has been telling it to fuck off for thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of years. And it's been doing it by its actions. It's been doing it by its deliberate acts. It's been doing it by accident. Just, we've been ignoring it. Now it's time to include it. Just shift your in another direction. Instead of ignoring it, include it. And instead of thinking that it's just going to pave the road a little smoother, recognize the enormity of the transformation that love itself can bring into your house. Amazing what it can do. It's amazing. It's astounding. And the more you imagine the transformations, the greater your desire to include it will be. And the more that increases, the more it pulls it magnetically in. So you just need a little system, a little posture, a little practical house cleaning in your head and in your heart and your emotions, and then give it some room to grow.
Mm.
And pretty soon it starts sprouting little things. And after a while, you got the damn stuff everywhere. And your life is humming in ways that other people's lives aren't humming. And they look at you and go, what are you doing? Your life is just, everybody else is struggling around here and you're just cheerful and happy and your things are getting taken care of. And it's like miracles are happening in your life every minute. And you go, well, yeah, they are, because love has a creative power and I'm in harmony with it. I'm acting in accordance with its existence. And when I do that, it coexists with me. And that energy and my energy blend together and affect the environment around me in a way that's positive to my life, to my family's life, to my work life. to my spiritual life. And it might seem mysterious to someone else, but when it's happening inside your life and you know it's because of your relationship to that part of the universe that is love, you're not surprised. And because no one can take anything from you, you've got everything you need coming out of your life. You can help other people acquire the same thing. They're not going to run out. They're not going to they're not going to empty the bank. There's 8 billion people on the planet, but they can all live a happy, harmonious, healthy, and joyful life. They're not going to because they don't know how yet. They haven't, and they can't change in the twinkling of an eye easily. Not that they can't. Saul on the road to Damascus did and became Paul and became the foundation of the work. But most people wouldn't. They would just plow along, causing themselves stress. Well, anyway, that's kind of how we see it. And you were talking earlier, Seb, about someone who was having some problems with thinking that people outside of themselves could impact their feelings.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, my feelings are a little tougher than other people's because I've been called a lot of things and it didn't kill me. So you can go ahead and call me a bunch of things that other people have probably called me, and I won't wilt like a flower. But that doesn't mean I know how to love through my feelings.
Hmm.
But once you learn that when someone directs their attention at you and sends an energy that's judgmental or blaming or one of those things, that you can love that person and love that energy and watch it transform into love and have them grow closer to learning nothing can cause me to feel anything I don't want to feel. It's my house. If you're going to be in my house, love is going to be running the show. I like it. And it's like a great, we were talking, it's like Mary Poppins, you don't go
Yeah.
in there and start screwing up the house because she's around. She's going to sort it out some way, mysterious way, you don't know. But if you try to raise Cain in Mary Poppins' house, she's loving the people she's living with. And so she uses her magical power. And all of these magical stories, like Mary Poppins, are rooted in what? They're rooted in love.
Hmm.
And they change the people's nature by them agreeing with love, agreeing with its premises.
And
And
it's
they have
also
to,
it's a beautiful example because as you spoke about earlier, it's not about the kids, it's about the father changing. The father was, his focus was elsewhere, and she never sat him down and had a discussion with him or did anything. She
oh,
changed him by just bringing love into the household and the joy that came up from it, and he turned his attention to them and changed. Like, he changed because of their example. And it's the same thing that Jesus spoke about, of like, I am the way. And I think there's also, I mean, Gandhi's a little different to Jesus, but I
I
think
don't
he
think
was a
so.
great expression of someone choosing love to make great change. There's that story of which I hope I don't butcher, but there's a story of a man who chased him to a train, and he said how he'd come from this village and how the village was, they wanted a lesson or something from him, and he wrote down on a piece of paper and he handed it to this man as the train went off. He looked at it and he said, "My life is the lesson." And it's true. I think with love, it's it can only be learned. It can only be demonstrated by doing it, by choosing love and acting love.
Well, not only probably, but that's the way we have learned that it
Yeah.
can be. Love is a relatively limitless creative power. If you looked at the
Yeah.
universe, you'd see there's a lot of different things going on, many of which we know nothing about. And it's all alive. See, the unique thing about the universe, which defies the material scientist, is that it's all living because it's life. Life can't create anything dead. It isn't possible because it would separate that thing that is dead from that which is life. And if you separate it, it would cease to exist, literally disappear. So when we look at, you don't have to prove it to me. It's just obvious. Life is, and nothing else is. That's it. You can't accept it. The idea that there's two sides to a road occurs to us because we believe it. We believe in the left and right side of a road because that works in the logic of our world. But there isn't really. There's just a road. You can drive this direction on that part of it. You can drive that direction on another part of it. And you have effectively created the appearance of two sides, but you still have just the road. And life is life. It creates a universe and it permeates it through different stages of being, different stages of expression of life. You've got a solar system up there, you got a sun up there blazing away. And you're going to what? Say it's dead because it's burning gas? Yes, it's burning gas. Yes, it's true. All that stuff is up there burning away. But what makes you think it's not living? Why would you suppose it's not living? Why would you suppose an atom, which is spinning around its nucleus and its protons with its electrons, is not an expression of life? It is an expression of life. It's not the life that we are, but how many atoms are in you and which ones are dead? Which atoms in you are dead? The ones you're getting ready to poop out? I don't think so. The ones you're taking in with food? I don't think so. There's just no death anywhere. There's only transformation and change. And once we kind of recognize that, then we stop separating things. We stop saying this is alive and this is dead. This is this and this is that. And we realize it's all one thing, like the road. The road is the road. And it's part of the journey. It's part of this landscape. So there's no place where one begins and the other ends. There's no place where the landscape ends and the road begins. The road is just a defined part of the landscape, and the landscape's a defined part of the planet, and the planet is a defined part of the solar system, and the solar system is a living thing within a vast amount of space filled with other solar systems. So which part of it is dead? Pluto's dead. The asteroids are dead. Or are they just demonstrating less life than the sun is? So you can philosophize about it, but you don't have to. Just accept what it is as living and relate to it from your livingness. Don't expect an asteroid to talk to you, but there might be people who do talk to asteroids. There's certainly people who talk to the sun, and there's people who talk to the God that lives and expresses itself as a sun, which is a greater being than we are. You know, you've got your own little sun going on in there in your heart, but it's not as big as the solar system and the heart of the solar system that's in the sun. And so who am I to make that up, to decide about any of that? I'm just living here in it, and I'm not going to make qualifications about life. I can make qualifications about types of minerals, types of livingness, types of experience, but I'm not really qualified to say this lives and this doesn't.
So we've just ended, and an age-old dispute that the pet shop owner in Monty Python was correct. The parrot was not dead after all.
No, absolutely. He's dead as a parrot. He's
Yes,
not dead as an accumulation of atoms. So a bigger life animating a group of atoms, like I'm doing, is we think of that as alive. Well, does that mean the atoms in me are dead? No, it doesn't. You know that, and I know that. Everybody does if they stop and look at it and go, no, that doesn't mean they're dead. It just means they're operating in a more defined type of life than I am. So when I leave the body, in which we do every night, but if I choose not to return, I lose my capacity to return through some form of death, then what does that say about me? It just says I'm gone. That's all. It just says I'm gone from this particular environment. And now all the atoms are on their own. I had them all pulled together into this relatively awkward, aged looking body. But when I leave it, they're on their own. So what do they do when they're on their own? They go back to their own premises. They dust to dust. And that's all they're doing. That certainly didn't kill them. I didn't kill all the living atoms of my body. The cells, yes, each cell had a certain amount of life, my life, sustaining it with its life. My liver had its own life, has its own life. I've punished it a time or two, but it's still in there, kicking away. But when I leave, the organization of all those organs and all those cells and all those elements that were pulled together to make up this magnificent human existence that humans share all just falls apart. It's lost its coherence. It lost its center. But that doesn't mean I died. It means I left this body. And where did I go? Well, I went to another region of consciousness that life holds for those who don't live on the material world anymore. And in that place, I'm thriving or doing something. Now, when you talk to the people who see in that world, who relate to life that lives there, which there's a number of people who can and do, they will tell you the conditions under which I, as a center being, am living in that world without the grace of a human body. I'm living in a different body. But I'm still just rolling along, and all the atoms that I brought together are rolling along, and love is there in all of it. And so once we give up the death grip on our consciousness about the livingness of things, then we propel that livingness into a more versatile idea of coexistence. And that's just a limitation of perception that we have when we're in a body. For some reason, when we're in a body, we don't see anything outside. One of the spiritual masters said, one of the problems of seeing beyond the human form is the speed with which atoms spin. They spin really fast. And when you've got a trillion of them around you and in you, all spinning, it creates a kind of field that seeing through it and beyond it into other dimensions of existence is very difficult. Just practical. It's practical. And to overcome that difficulty requires developing an inner sense of sight, which we can do, and some do, that allows you to pierce that frequency of bewildering energy and see beyond it and see what's going on there. But it is a gift of nature that we don't see that, because if we did, we wouldn't be able to function here because we don't know anything about it. And if the vision of things in other dimensions is going on simultaneously what's going on in this dimension, and is quite different, it can be extraordinarily disorienting and confusing. So perhaps love in nature has lent itself to supporting the human being growing his consciousness in matter for reasons known to love, reasons known to evolution or to development of being or to God, if you want to put it in a reference. So there's no point in arguing with it, and there's no point in wanting to see beyond into a realm that would confuse you and maybe scare you and maybe give you heartburn. So I think if we take where we are and what we are and we include love with it, it prepares us for all of these greater dimensional experiences by conditioning us to understand that there is nothing other than love. There's nothing to be afraid of. Because once you are invested with love at a sufficient depth of power, unshakable power, because you come to a place of knowing that you and love are inseparably one. You're 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 one and one, and they're not creating two. You're just one, and that's both one. Once that knowingness saturates to a certain depth, the realization that that's the truth of life takes away the fear of it. How it all goes, how all that fear goes away is an experience you'll have to have when it happens. But if you meet and speak with those who are spiritually invested in love to the sufficiency of its depth in them, they have no fear. They fear not. They live in harmony and accordance with the energy of life that is called love, the energy of life that's called will, and the energy of life that's called intelligence. And they live there with freedom because that's real. It's just not real to us yet. Now, it would be as if we were living over there in the dead part, this part that science says, oh, that's dead. Rocks are dead, The universe itself is dead. It's just got some life here and there in it growing on some planet, maybe out there in the universe. If you're living in that idea, then that's how it looks to you. But when you're living in the idea of it all being alive and all invested with love, then you're closer to what's real. And so
Yeah.
you think, well, death must occur. It must be a reality at some place because that rock looks dead to me. Well, you see, that's not the case, is it? The water looks dead to me. It's just hydrogen and oxygen bound together. Bound together by what? By life. By a covalent bond, yes. But that's life's way of hooking these two together to create water. And they get along great together as long as they're stuck together. You can separate them with electricity, which is a part of life. So we can think of certain things being dead. And when you come through a graveyard where people are rotting away, you get a sense of death. You get a sense of the breaking down, the falling away from a greater wholeness, which an
Mm.
animal or a human has. But that's just the smell of decay. It's not a fact of death. It's just a result of something dying, leaving the physical form. And you can wonder whether your pet, the little Sparky, drops over dead, and you go plant him in the cemetery, and you're just wondering whether Sparky has any place in heaven. But what's Sparky doing? He's doing fine. He's being exactly what he is, exactly where he's supposed to be. Now, does he remember you? Well, probably. He has no reason to forget you. It's still new. But at some point or another, probably he will forget the wonderful times you had out hiking through the forest. But maybe there's some part of Sparky that'll always remember? I don't know. We don't have to know. We just can love Sparky wherever he is in the field of love, in the union of love with all living things, and let that eventually become truth for us. And then we can know where Sparky is, what he's doing, and whether he remembers us or whether we remember him. It's an endless life puts a strain on things like memory. So we have to accept what happens in endless life. It's a scary thing, endless life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, because you're going to have to grow up into what? Greater life, greater accomplishment, greater being, but greater harmony with love, greater investment in the universe full of all the other lives. And it's a wonderful kind of treasure to realize that no one ever died. And all the beings that you ever loved, and all the times you've ever loved them, are still alive. And will have, and if you built some love with them through a lifetime of shared coexistence, shared suffering, shared accomplishment, then you're going to recognize each other in love somewhere, sometime, wherever it is. So I think that love gives such gifts to the consciousness that invests the time to build a relationship to it, that there's nothing, that no way that we could measure it. The joy that comes into people's lives at the constant recognition of the gifts of love are just endless. They're just endless, and one after another. And you think you don't lose anyone. When you lose someone that you really love, it hurts. It's a deep pain. But the realization that you're separated for time from someone, and that's all that it amounts to, takes a lot of the sting out of the pain. Well, you may have to die to realize that, to be back in the same house where they're sharing existence, or you can learn it through love, living it in the life we're in. Yeah.
That sounds pretty good.
Well, if it's true, it is.
It is true.
But I invest in the universe I want to live in. Why would I invest in a universe I don't want to live in?
Yeah.
So, because I would like these things to be true, I invest in proving them to be so. And because I'm not an idiot, I'm not a genius maybe, but I'm not a complete idiot. I recognize the effort of others to live this way,
Yeah.
to prove the truth of this. And I respect some of them quite well. I have great respect for the Buddha. I have great respect for the Christ. I have great respect for those who have given their lives. Lifetime after lifetime, the human race has given some of its greatest beings to the establishing of the consciousness of the livingness of this beautiful sphere as a constant, embracing, unfolding, joyful dynamic. It has many levels and many mansions, as the Bible says, but you're alive in all of them. Any one in which you find yourself, you're alive in it, which means something about a human being is capable of experiencing virtually any part of the universe, big as it is, little as it is. There's some part of us that once we became self-conscious humans, we can find our way into. And that is partly why fantasy writers and science fiction writers cook up all these fabulous stories where beings are interacting with galactic beings or other things like this, because it's a fluid universe. and it's alive, and life loves life. Once you get past the idea that there's such a thing as something that's not love, that you could not love somebody, that you could not love a thing, all you can do is not be conscious of love. You can't exterminate it. You can't, you can't, you could kill all the rats in London and hate them, but you can't snuff out the total existence of their lives. They're a creation of life. And at some point, you will love them. That doesn't mean you're going to let them run wild and multiply in too many in a city where we share the existence. But there's a balance in there somewhere. And as a superior being to the rats, you're going to have to modify some way the volume that there are of them. Now, how we do that is the best way we know how. And at some point, when love is sufficiently understood, there's probably a way in which you can make it happen humanely. I don't know. We're not very good at humane. Humane is something we have a lot to learn from. So we don't know how yet. But we don't know, we know so little about love that it's irrelevant to it. I think at one point we did know a lot about it. Like we knew a lot about angels. We knew a lot about beings that don't have dense material bodies. We knew a lot about their place around us in the universe, but we forgot them. We lost contact with them. They retreated away from us into the crystallization of the material world. To gain back that relationship, we're going to have to develop ourselves into their world in a way, using our senses, our inner senses, that brings us back into appreciation of those beings and what they're doing and the love that animates them. And I think when that happens, you've got a lot of capacities and abilities to manage this planet in more humane ways. We might even stop murdering them and eating them. I don't know. Fried chicken, it's a good thing. Texas barbecue, hard to say no to. But at a certain point, our appetites change. And circumstances improve, particularly for the chickens or for the pork ribs. So I don't know. I'm just working on one step at a time. And the
Yeah.
first step is to engage love into me in a way that it flows through me in an abundant spring and an artesian well of love coming out into the world around me. That's possible. I know that's possible.
Yeah.
And we have some on the planet, a number of them actually, who are like that and do that. And from what they say about themselves and about the life in which they live with love, you can get a lot of good ideas. And if you think that the highest conversation you can have about life is with your priest down at the corner, then you've misunderstood the others who know more about it than they do.
Yeah.
Including the Pope in that. He knows things that a lot of other people don't know. But he's a child compared to those who have embraced love completely and are privy to the consciousness of life that lives within it. That's an order of being on earth that human beings grow into, and some already have, and they become Buddhas or Bodhisattvas or whatever you want to call them, but they're greater than the average human by miles. But their conversation about reality is so different from their experiences with love that they have difficulty living in the world with others. It's like what are they going to talk about? The illusions that we have about life, the illusion that we have about living without love in our consciousness. It's not just a small academic thing. It's a very big shift in how we relate to things, and how you're going to relate to someone who lives love constantly, perfectly, nearly perfectly. They're going to just look different, feel different, be different to be around, and maybe feel threatening if you're a paranoid person and you meet someone with that kind of power in them. You might suspect that power could harm you, not knowing that love has no capacity to harm. It doesn't do it. It's not its game.
Hmm.
But if you don't know it and you live in a world of violence, someone who has that kind of power would seem threatening. Just because you know they got power, you can feel it. You can feel that that person's untouchable. And if they're mad at you because you're a wicked son of a bitch, maybe they should just be put out of the way so that way you don't have to worry about them. We've been doing that since Christ. So what makes you think they would not do it now? They just, it wasn't really a vote. You know, they said to the public when they crucified Jesus, they said to the public, we got, which was Pilate's idea. He didn't have any problem with Jesus. The guy didn't demonstrate anything that he thought was worthy of killing. So he said to the group, you got a deal where you can let a guy go. It's Passover. You see, remember, it was Passover. And part of the tradition of Passover is you can free from prison one person. So that person could be him or it could be someone else. So the rabble rousers went out there and convinced the public that was there, and who knows how many were there. Who do we want to have freed, Barabbas or Jesus? Well, Barabbas was a well-known thief. Everybody knew him or knew about him, everybody that was local. So, yeah, free Barabbas. So someone said, what did they say? Did they say Jesus? No, they said Barabbas. Oh, okay. So we freed Barabbas, and they made a movie about it, which had probably had nothing to do with his life. I don't think there's much recorded about how Barabbas felt about the whole thing. I don't know how I'd feel about it if they said, you're free, but we're going to kill this embodiment of love in your place. He might have given it a second thought, but I doubted. He was a thief. After all, he stole his life from the Christ. So, we don't, we can think about all this stuff, but you have to just make your own choice. What's your choice? That's all. What's your choice? And live with your choice. Own your choice. I've lived through a long life and a lot of pain and a lot of misery and seen a lot of suffering and death. So I choose love.
Yeah.
That's just my choice. That doesn't make it your choice. It doesn't make it anybody else's. And it doesn't make it right for me and wrong for anyone else. There just isn't any such thing. Love doesn't deal with the world the way religious people think. It's not judging people for doing harm. It's just loving them, which is kind of what Christ did if you get down to it. And it just loves. And by loving, gives. And by receiving, we accept. By rejecting, we deny and create what they call karma for ourselves. And how do you reject love? Well, take somebody's stuff away from them because you're bigger. That's how we do it. And what are you saying to love? You're saying fuck off. I'm taking this guy's camera and his watch and his shoes because I'm bigger than him and I got a gang of guys who will do it with me, and love can suck eggs because we want that stuff. Well, you're going to set an energy up in motion that will come back to haunt you at some point or another to remind you that that love is still present in the universe and that's not its choice. Because it won't violate our free will doesn't mean it's not paying attention and it's doing its rightful duty of creating experience for us to learn a lesson that we don't know the answer to. So now is the time. Now is when humanity is singularizing love out of the plethora of things to focus on and decide its reality in your life. That's the only place you can prove it. I can't make love real in your life. You have to do that. You have the right to do that. You have the right to stand and say, I don't believe it, I don't believe it, I don't believe it, while everyone around you is just bathing in love, laughing and having a great time. You can still be a naysayer. You have free will. And love will support you doing that because that's all it does. It loves you. It's your choice. You say, I want to choose the, and why would it do that? It would do it because you still need more experience growing consciousness outside of love until you finally reach a place where you want inside of it because there's nowhere else to go. You've learned enough. You learned enough about what's outside of love. Now you want to learn what's inside of it,
Hmm.
which is reality itself. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's where we are, where humanity is right now. And for that reason, we're going to have help coming into the world because there's great help around the world. And all it has to do is step forward into the world with us and help make that choice easier, not make it for you.
No.
And you can see how this came to be in the Christian thing where they said, this guy took all your sins off of you and did all of that. Well, that's not a very good explanation. If you robbed a bank, you still have to do the time. And you can think you don't, but there's a system in life that keeps track of your bank robbery and will eventually bring you around to meeting that and restoring the balance that you imbalanced by that theft. So no one's going to do that for you. Not that it's impossible. Gurus will tell you that certain gurus of a high nature can take the karma of their disciple onto themselves. See, they didn't erase it. They didn't make it go away. They took it on themselves because they have an inner capacity through their power with love to be able to transmute it, to be able to transform it. But when they do that, they take on the responsibility for that lesson for their student, for their disciple. So there's no free rides. There's just someone helping you out because they want to teach you something that's a very important lesson to make you stronger in the cadre of good over evil. And they'll take on the burden of your error so that you can become part of their gift. And this is what makes a true ashram out of a bunch of ragtag humans who find a way into love that way. And there's ways in which all of this works, and that's why we have these stories of organizations and ashrams and groups and teachers and spiritual beings and all of that. And there's also those that make an enemy of love because they want the material power and the excessive desires that come with that material power. So they choose in that direction. It's just, that's how big life is.
Yeah.
Well, your free will can choose evil over good if you want to, or you can choose good over evil if you want to. But you're not really changing life. You're just choosing to live in the group of people who are unconscious of love over the group of people who are conscious of it. And if you get too many of the ones who are unconscious of love in one particular location, then that location becomes fairly negative. It's going to naturally. And there's some cities in the world who have way too much of that negativity. So we don't put them on our vacation list. And then there's some cities that have a tremendous amount of goodness going on in them. So all of it has an explanation. There's nothing in the universe around us that doesn't have a logical, understandable explanation of its strange condition, including human nature, which is the strangest of all. And you can make it a pastime to learn all that, or you can make it a pastime to create love in your experience and learn that.
Yeah.
I don't care what UFOs are doing. I honestly don't care. I think they're out there, and I think the government cares very much. And I think I'm not sure why someone visiting the planet is somebody they think they need to shoot down without asking any questions, like it was Dodge City in the 1860s. But they do. They've chosen to just attack these guys as if they had no good intentions. And I don't think that's the case. So they're probably wrong in doing that. But they want their gear, they want their spaceships, they want their technology. And so I think to a degree we have their gear, we have their technology. But I don't care. It's not something I'm interested in or going to spend much of my time, a little. It's interesting, it's going on in my world. But my antidote to all of that is growing my relationship to love.
Yeah.
And not as a defense against aliens. I find no harm in them. Nothing has ever evidenced harm to me from them. I've heard stories of bullshit. I've never been personally probed and have no memory of it, but I do not trust my government with the task of dealing with aliens. So I do have a lot of concerns about how we deal with stuff like that and other countries. So I'm interested because it's a thing going on in my world. But the antidote is always love. It's always that.
Yeah.
Personally and as a group and as a world, it's the hope of the world, the energy of love becoming released into human beings by our own actions. And I'm working on it, and I intend the Love Foundry to be a place that helps people do that to a greater degree than they may be able to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what we do. And it's going to grow. It's going to grow because it's like any school. The school of love is just another school. It's like a school of geology. You want to learn how all the rocks in the world work, then take geology,
Yeah.
metallurgy. But if you want to learn how love works, then go to the school of love. Go learn what it is and how it functions and how to take it on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'll see how our relationships go with other people and your world, your life, your job,
Yeah.
your ability to pay your way.
Yeah. That that change has to come, and it has to come through me choosing
Well,
love.
in your life, there is no other way to get it there.
Yeah.
If you were living as a child with your father and mother, then their degree of ability becomes your degree of ability
Hmm.
because you're in their environment and you're still their child. But once you reach adulthood, you're kind of on your own with it and you have to decide, take up the challenge. And you can make it an avocation or you can make it a vocation or you can just make it a hobby. You can do what you want to with it. There's a lot of religious people, but do they practice the art of love, the science of love? No, probably not. because it is a science of love.
Yeah.
It's referred to by the spiritual folk up there in the spiritual folk land as the science of applied energy, which when you think about that, you realize, oh, that's a very logical, intellectual point of view. Let's take the romance out of love and turn it into the science of applied energy, if that pleases you. And it does some people who like it to be more of a science and less of a emotionally engaged process. Doesn't matter. So the science of love, or the science of applied energy, is just what are you doing with the energies of life in you? How are you applying them to your life? And you can see that that has the tendency to elevate you towards a superior being, a God being who's applying the energies of life to his life. And that gives you a step up, a step deeper in, a step wider in responsibility, because you're taking on the science of it. You're taking on the ability, which means you're taking on responsibility, the ability to respond to a greater circle. If you don't have a relationship with love as a working science in your life, you can't really be charged with the responsibility for using it, can you? You don't know. You're still ignorant. You're still a child in it. But once you take on a level of responsibility with it and you become proficient to some degree of application of love, you're going to find an obligation that comes with it. The obligation to love intelligently with will. And if you love intelligently with will, then you're demonstrating wisdom. And you have joined the Buddha's crowd. And the greater the Buddha or the greater the Bodhisattva, the more that being is applying love intelligently with will in his vicinity, whatever that vicinity is, for a planet, for an earth, for a solar system, for a quadrant of the galaxy. I don't know. I don't know how big Buddhas get, but I suspect a galaxy is an organized being with 100 billion stars in it, coordinating it all around a purpose of harmony that is delivered to that being by life through love. Doubt if there's a question about that. But what are you? You got 100 billion cells probably, which are equivalent to solar systems in some galaxy. So are you delivering love to all your cells? Are you consciously encouraging them towards greater evolution and perfection in you? If you are, you're going to be a healthy guy. You're not going to be inflicting disease on a portion of your body by not loving it. Any place you feel distress in your body, that's the first place to love, because it obviously needs it, doesn't it? But no doctor's going to tell you to love that foot that hurts. He's going to give you something to make it feel less distressed. Very few things that doctors do will cause healing. Fortunately, you have a tremendous amount of natural healing in you, so he can take away the pain of your broken ankle while you heal it up from within you. And you're not even doing the healing. You're letting the animal nature in which you live, whose fault it was your probably fault of choice that led to the broken ankle. The animal didn't even do it itself, because it was doing what you wanted it to do when you jumped off of that silly thing, thinking you could fly, and landed on concrete and broke your ankle. And you went, oh, shit, that was stupid. But the animal just goes along trying to heal it up. And the doctor puts the bones back where they belong, so it'll heal in a good form, gives you some painkillers, and off we go again. But love can really change the dynamic of all of that. And you have access to it. You have an endless bank account to draw on love. When you were born, it was opened in your name. And if you'd have had good teachers in your life, you would have been drawing on that account from early on. And okay, you didn't have good teachers. Okay, that's bad karma for you. So be your own good teacher and start drawing on that immediately on that account. The account's still open. It won't close until you're dead, until you move off the planet into another realm, and then that account will go with you there. But you won't be able to draw on the account of love the way you can when you're embodied as a human being. There's things you can do when you're alive as a mortal that give you the power to change who you are, to invest yourself with love, to become more. That happens in human life, in material life. That's where we can change in the drama of living. We can become a better human being. Once you're off the human plane, once you're in the spiritual worlds, you're out of that causative capacity. Now, I don't know why it's set up that way, but that seems to be the way it works. So you wait for another opportunity to manifest in the physical world and do it. And when you do it, you build in something that you hope to learn or grow into or gain. Now, how often you can appear in the human race as a human being, I don't know. Some people probably appear quite frequently, and some people maybe a long time between appearances. And so either way, you are in a place where you can cause things to happen. You can cause love to happen and begin to grow that into you and into the world, or you can cause non-love to happen and create karma and create. Because that's just energy used for something other than love, and it needs to be redeemed by you and reapplied. It's like spending your money in the wrong place. You have to go back and get that money back sometime in the future and spend it wisely instead of falsely or unwisely. Now, these things can make a certain amount of sense, but it doesn't give you any greater ability to do these things until you choose to take power in your hands with love and choose to apply it to your life. And I know that that's not an easy thing to imagine doing. It's not just being kind to others. That's a good start. There's nothing wrong with kindness. But if you want to apply this energy in a way that makes you grow in it, that makes you open into it, then it takes more refined thought than just being nice to people. So let's do it. That's fine. I have answers for that. Love has answers. And if you listen, it'll speak to you. Now, some people are better at listening to love's directions than others. And so they can help you figure out what might work for your life, just like a doctor can help you figure out how to fix a problem. There are love doctors, you know, there are people that just have enough experience with this whole business we're talking about that they can give you some suggestions. But for you, it has to become real only through your choice, only through your choosing. And a person like me or a person like you can only be so right. We're only so right.
Yeah.
So you have to recognize that this could be bad advice. But I've given enough advice, lived through enough of my own advice, watched this work, and spent a lot of time interacting with those who are really, really good at it, that I've got a better than average shot at shifting the game a little for people. If they listen, if they choose to listen and apply the energy, there's only 4 or 5 things you need to do to make this work in your behalf. But one of them is you have to take action.
Yeah.
And you have to put yourself in that posture in relationship to love that it can come in and not be deflected off or blocked. And that posture involves several things before you take the action. One is you have to calm your ego down and get it out of interfering with the process, because it does. Ego interferes a lot by judgment, thinking, and feeling, and trying to hog the territory of your mind and consciousness to itself, which because it's physical with you, you can shout down love easily. Love won't compete with a lot of loud noise. So you have to calm the noise down. You have to identify love somehow in your consciousness. So you go, that's what I want. Well, that's a little bit of a practice. You can locate it visually. You can locate it intentionally. You can locate it with an imaginatory process. There's a number of things you can do, but when you do that, you isolate love down, so you know that right there, that's love. Well, it probably isn't love, but because you intend it to be the symbol for love, you can say, I can take these beads. They're just wooden beads, mala beads, Buddhist kind of beads. And I can say, okay, I'm going to use this as a symbol for love. So love out here, which is invisible and immense and distant, I can say this I'm going to use as a symbol for you. So when I'm holding these beads, I'm holding love. And I bond the two together in my consciousness. Well, love's everywhere. It's in each of these beads. So I'm just establishing a connection to it with these. Well, then it's there, isn't it? It's right there because I have acknowledged this as a symbol for something invisible and vague and not very clear. Or I can just imagine something in my mind. Or I can look and actually open my senses and see the presence of love. I can see a beautiful golden flowing particles of love going on in my consciousness at a certain level. That's what it'll look like. So there's a number of ways you can do that. And whatever one feels easiest or best, that's one of those things you need to do. And then you need to imagine what you want it to do. What do I want to do? So I've got my hands on it and the beads. Now what do I want it to do? I want it to flow from the beads to me, from the beads to my banged up knee, from this to you, someone I care about, someone I want to be bathed in the healing. You see, there's steps to the process. That's all. Just like any process. If we want to go to the movie together, we got to pick a movie. We got to decide what we're going to do. We got to decide how we're going to get there. We got to set a time to do it. And then we got to act on that. And pretty soon we're at the movie theater watching a movie. But we're doing the same thing. We're just doing it in something that's got some loose parts aren't as obvious as calling an Uber. But an Uber is pretty esoteric too. If the movie theater is 10 miles from here and someone knows nothing about Ubers and doesn't have a car, he's going to like, well, how are we going to get there? Oh, it's easy. We're going to call an Uber. They're going to pick us up. Really? Yeah, no, we're going to pay them $25 and we're going to be at the movie theater in 15 minutes, 20 minutes max. So that's a revelation to someone who doesn't know anything about that. Same thing with love. If I put it in here, you can say, well, how do I know it's actually in those beads? Because I put it there. I connected it to here in my imagination. Well, does that work? Yes, it works. How will you know that? By doing it. And by doing it over and over until you feel the whole thing flow. And you do. You get to the point where you know how to put love in something immediately, just because all I'm using this for is a connection to the invisible. And love's not arguing with me, it's cooperating with me. So when you set yourself up at the workshop at the Love Foundry, you work on doing these few things and then acting and then letting the action produce the result.
Hmm.
And if it doesn't work the first time, have you ever tried juggling with 3 balls? Nothing to it, just
Yeah.
until you start, they just go everywhere. Because everything has a rhythm to it, and everything has a knack, a touch, a skill. So you just practice the skill. But if you've got no patience for practicing a skill, then it's going to be hard for you. And the spiritual masters will tell you they love a disciple who is just diligent and practical, more than some brilliant sort of atomic guy who just flies off and can do all these energetic things. They don't have disrespect for that, but they know that that diligent, repetitive acting of a person who wants to go somewhere will get them there. It just that person will pass up a lot of other people. It's kind of a tortoise in the hare approach as a human being, because your focus gets better, your action gets cleaner, your motion gets smoother, and pretty soon love has been handled in such a way that it can flow through to the physical world, through you, through your mind, through your emotions, through your physical form, and through your etheric energy body. It suddenly appears in the environment. And that's practice. And so you don't have to practice a ton of things, a few things, and take action
Yes.
and be committed.
Hmm.
The commitment is like laying down a superhighway. When I'm committed to making this damn thing happen in me, to make love become something real in me, that commitment causes all kinds of things in nature to join you.
Hmm.
They come and join you. They weren't even arrived. They weren't even a thing until you committed. Because as soon as the commitment is there, it summons creation through other beings to help you.
Yeah, I've had that in my life where things are seemingly impossible, but my commitment was so strong to it that impossible happened anyway.
Yeah, no, it appears somehow.
Yeah.
And that's the way of it. That's a way of it. And we'd like to call it a miracle, but it isn't. It's just a summoning. You have
Yeah.
the human beings have mystical powers. They have the power to summon. They have the power to do a lot of things that we don't know how to do because we've never been taught. And they're not really safe to teach humans their own powers until they learn something about love and have some commitment to it. If I'm a responsible teacher, and you have a power that I could place in your hands, I would be a fool to place that in your hands until you have a certain measure of love as a
Hmm.
co-creative intention in you. Because if I'm wrong about that, you're going to use that power to go out and create a lot of harm. And that's already happened in the human race many times. The main teachers who have given their students knowledge and powers and abilities that they weren't ready for. So the good teachers are very reluctant to show much of anything until you come with the basic intention to love.
Hmm.
That opens doors magnificently. And the commitment to it opens all those mystical doors, and the mystical beings, angelic beings, other beings, we can call them angelic beings, we can call them nature forces, we can call them lugoi. You can call them whatever you want, but they are, and they coexist. And many of them have no dense physical bodies. They just function in the energy waves and do things for committed beings. And there are those that do things for beings committed to doing harm, doing evil. Now those are forces that have been charged and are responsive to motives. So learning how to love is a lesson, but
Yeah.
applying it is your opportunity to make it move, to make it become something in your world.
Yeah.
And once it starts growing, then you start to realize you got a God by the tail. Let's see you grow it into something huge and magnificent, and grow yourself into something equally magnificent. And that's what the human race is preparing itself to do or reject, depending on our attitudes.
Yeah.
But in
Well,
my world, preparing to accept love is the only rational option.
yes, I agree. And I think that's the choice.
I think it is.
Hopefully, anyone listening would make. It's the choice I'm making. And
Yeah.
hopefully, as we get clearer and stronger and demonstrate it to a greater and greater ability, we can strengthen that in others too.
And don't consider not accomplishing it immediately a failure.
Hmm.
There's no point in doing that. You're trying to hit the target, the center of the target with a bow and arrow, and you fire your first arrow and it goes off towards Jones's. And so you throw the bow down and go, that's it. I failed. I failed to hit the target. I failed to hit the damn thing, let alone the center. Well, yeah, that's what we would expect. You have no coordinated muscle tone. You have no sense of wind resistance. You have no sense of any of these things. You're just pulling back a string and letting an arrow go. So if it takes more than one or two times, okay. And anybody who's ever mastered the skateboard knows that you don't just jump on one and take off. And if you watch one of those kids down at your high school trying to flip one, he's out there in the parking lot trying to flip it and land on it, risking his ankles every time, 100 times, and still hasn't stuck it. So it just takes time to get it right.
Yeah.
And some are better at it than others. A Tony Hawk's on a skateboard is just a god on it because he just has all the right tones. He has all the right muscle tension. He has all the right build to be really good at it in a short time. But he still has to do all of the jumps necessary to get good at it. He just
Hmm.
becomes super good when other people become good. And love is just a thing you learn. It's a thing you learn how to do. And then once it enters us and starts to become a companion in our thought and our feeling and our actions, a whole new dimension of it opens up, because now your identity with it is starting to get closer and closer. And at some point, you realize you are love. You're a living expression of it all the time. And then you stop trying to be something else. You stop holding on to some memory from the past that you identified with because you didn't know how to get to love. You couldn't find it. So you chose other energies. You chose other abilities and will and intelligence and manifested an ability to shoot arrows into the heart of an enemy rather than
Hmm.
using love to eliminate the antagonism of the enemy. Okay, it's a new toy. It's a new game. It's a new way. So get good at it. Get better at it than me. I recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, Seb, that's
Yeah, I think
kind
this
of a
is a good
general
place
conversation.
to end.
Yeah.
I think if there's anyone out there, thelovefoundry.com It could change to lovefoundry.org at some point in the near future, but if you wanted to contact us, we also have social media, so feel free to reach out with any questions that you have, or if you know more about love, then definitely please contact us
Yeah.
and share with us. And yeah, thank you so much, Dan. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Don't dismay. It's here already. You don't have to go find it. You know, the great guru Hograth, what I forget his full title. This is Swami from India, lived in Bombay, and he became, I don't know, fully enlightened. Is that what you would call it? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's what he became is what accompanies the phrase "I am that," which
Yeah.
is love, and that explains the unity that comes with it, where he recognized that he is all beings. He is already all beings and himself, and he is famous for the way he would talk to people who would come to him. People found their way to his little tiny. He rolled cigarettes for a living in Bombay, which is the bottom of the bottom. He was an untouchable, and untouchables didn't have gurus. But there was one guru in Bombay who was quite famous and quite good, and he would take on anybody. And his friend was going there one day, and he said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "Oh, I'm going to see my guru." And he didn't have one, of course, because he's untouchable. They don't get gurus and shit. So he said, "Well, do you think I could meet him or come and see him or something?" And he said, "Well, come on along. Let's find out." So he went, and the guru took him in and said, "Sure, join us, have a seat." And it was the greatest day of his life because he suddenly had a spiritual guru who knew way more than he did about, I don't know, it wasn't Buddhism exactly. It's a Hindu form of some kind or another, but
Yeah.
it's life. It's the spirit of things. So, and then the guy died, the guru. But before he died, he gave him a mantra, which is what gurus do, because they look at where you're weak and they give you something to put a chink in the armor, strengthen you up. And the guru gave him the mantra, "I am," to work on. Just work on "I am," and what that actually means. What are you really? Well, so then the guru died shortly thereafter, and he was without a guru again. But he had a mantra, so he just worked it over and over and over and over. And 3 years later, he just popped into from "I am" to "I am that." He became it in consciousness.
Hmm.
And he didn't know what to do. So he ran off to the North Himalayas somewhere to hang out with the big minds. And he said, "Well, I was up there for a while. I don't know, a year or two maybe. And then I realized, what am I doing here? I already have it. I got it. Now I need to think about that." So he said, "I guess I'll go home." His family probably needed him, but I think by that time he had other kids running the little shop that he had run, the cigarettes they rolled. And he still wasn't doing anything. And his guru finally showed up in his consciousness one day and said, "What the hell are you doing? I didn't give you a mantra to grow you into consciousness, to have you sit around. Get out there and help people." So he didn't know how, he didn't know what to do. So he set up he had a little shack in Bombay where he did his business. So he built a little tiny room on top of it, straight up, because he couldn't go out anywhere. That took money. He didn't have any money. And he made that his little ashram. So he would sit up there and people would show up to talk to him about what he realized when he realized, "I am that." And they finally created a book about him because he never wrote anything. He probably didn't know how to write, called "I Am That," I think.
Yeah, I am that. Nazagarata, I think it was.
Nazagarata, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure
And
I'm
people,
butchering the name, but
no, well, he shouldn't have all those letters in there like that if he didn't want people to butcher it. So people would show up from everywhere. People like Alan Watts from England and other people back in the day, back in the 50s, probably clear back in the 50s. And he would talk to them, enlighten them.
Hmm.
But they would say to him, what do I need to know? What they would ask him questions about things, and he would say to them things like, where will I find my enlightenment or something? He'd say, why are you looking for something you've never lost? And he would just, unlike a lot of gurus who say a lot of odd things in their flowery jargon, he was very matter of fact about the fact that all of this is inside of you and always was, and you just need to bring it out in you. Don't go looking for something you haven't lost. You haven't lost it. You just don't remember where you put it. It's in you. So people like this go by unseen by most of the world. Very simple man, rolled cigarettes for a living for other people, so they wouldn't have to be bothered rolling a cigarette. They could just buy his for 1 rupee or something. And they didn't become famous. They weren't Gandhi or anything, but they had it.
Hmm.
They found it. They earned their way into it. And once they did, they became people who could guide other people towards it. And that's how we progress. And love is no different. There are those who are working to help people into it because they have some faith in it. They have some commitment to it. They have some realization of it. That's how we go.
Yeah.
And you will too. Everyone will. It's just a question of when you choose to take that step into the next dimension of reality.
Hmm. Yeah. And if anyone wants to listen to that book, I believe on YouTube is a free audio book of I Am That by Nazagarata. And it's mostly questions followed by answers. And
It's a crack up because people ask these heavy weighted questions about consciousness because they think of themselves as Buddhist students. And instead of getting these really super complex answers, they get this very direct guy who was
yeah.
famous for that. And he's been dead now since I think the 70s. I don't know, don't remember exactly, but somewhere along in there he passed on. And but it was worth it. He was worth it. And there's a
Hmm.
lot like him, beings who just knew a lot and
Hmm.
acted on what they knew, and it became a part of their life. And there's no one religion in the world that is greater than others. It's what you have a tendency towards, is what you feel comfortable with. But the master of love, which is the Christ, is the world teacher. And as a responsible person in that office, is willing to be of service to you, to me, to anyone choosing and wishing to learn how to activate the love in their own nature. And while he doesn't seem accessible to people, he's on the earth and he's around. In the future, not even the distant future, he will become a public figure, but for the meantime, he's teaching wherever he happens to be, uh, to whoever happens to be teaching, and on the inner plane and through telepathy, through your mind, through the place you are, accessible to anyone. Anyway, carry on with all of that, and we'll continue this general discussion. We don't do a lot of things we don't do the workshop approach. This is an informational approach. We discuss some things you would do in a workshop, but I think we'll probably start teaching some workshop on a different night than teaching the general stuff that we do,
Yeah.
so that people can have an opportunity to start applying to their own life, tools. Just getting general information about it, like we have discussed today, is helpful because it conditions you and tunes you towards being receptive to that which love is. But specific tools are specific and they help you in ways that applying them can do. So we're going to organize that, and so that each episode would be a workshop in itself.
Hmm.
And that takes a little more thoughtfulness than me just rambling along about love and conversation. But that's our job, so we'll do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for this today, Seb. Thanks for showing up for this.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you, everyone. Until next time.